Does happiness really exist? Well, if there's misery and unhappiness, there must also be its counterpart, happiness. Does unhappiness exist? Is there anybody hearing this who hasn't known some unhappiness? Well, there are certainly people who feel like they don't know what happiness is, and maybe they believe there is no such thing. But again, if there's unhappiness, there is also its counterpart, happiness. We use this word happiness all the time, but do we really understand its meaning? Do we give it the right value? Can anyone give a definition of what happiness is? What can happiness be? How can happiness be measured? And what is our happiness based on? Is our happiness only in satisfying our personal desires? To be happy, what should we aim for? Happiness and unhappiness are conditions in time and place. They are not eternal states, but created conditions. But conditions in time and space change. Both unhappy and sad conditions are created by how we use the mind in creating our thoughts and emotions. In other words, our elementals. The mind is the same for all, but it's in how we use the mind that creates elementals that produce happy or sad conditions. By our thoughts and by our emotions, we are either creating uplifting human in nature angels or destructive human in nature devils. Now the question comes, up to what point do our elementals help and serve us? Up to what point are our elementals destructive? They are constructive up to the point of creating hells. They are constructive up to the point when we start to make ourselves and others feel miserable. We've all felt we are more than just a limited personality self. But to find that, we must break our identification with our egoism. Our egoism is always unsatisfied, always looking outside itself for happiness. But our inner self is never unsatisfied or looking outside itself for happiness. We could say that all our happinesses we've experienced so far are just relative degrees of happiness. The only full and lasting happiness is in finding your real self. And your real self is not your name or your bodily form. It's not your feelings or thoughts. It's not your aims or desires. Those are yours, but they are not you. Maybe at this point on your journey you think those are you, but eventually you will find out they are definitely not you. Then who are you? You are that steady central point of awareness, the point of awareness that receives all the impressions in your life. Your happiness, your sadness, and everything else revolves around that central point of your I-ness. All those things are reflected externally around this central point of awareness, which is you. And all those experiences are assimilated into the center, which is you. We can easily see that in every country there is more and more unhappiness than ever. Where does this misery come from? It's coming from the people and how they use the mind in creating negative emotions and thoughts. We're allowed to choose how we use the mind. We can create destructive elementals or we can create beneficial elementals. This makes us responsible for our elementals and the happy or sad consequences they create. Most people create elementals subconsciously, making their life happy or sad to whatever degree. But with constructive, positive elementals, we can make our life happier and more satisfying. But we never can make our life happy by creating negative, unreasonable elementals. And we also can create elementals that serve a good purpose. These kinds are projected by the self-aware personality rationally. They are consciously created thought forms. Thought desire type elementals that build conditions of happiness for yourself and those around you. When you are successful at creating these with reason and love, you will find your real self, your divine nature. Nothing material brings us lasting happiness. Material things can bring a temporary satisfaction, but not lasting happiness. And there will always be some degree of dissatisfaction until we find our real self.